The transfer portal is not going anywhere. It's open now. Players have entered. More Ducks are going to go in. Jackson Jones, defensive lineman from this class, he and Shaq McCroy, a couple of true freshmen, have both hit the transfer portal and will seek greener pastures. We certainly wish them well. I imagine the primary reason that both those guys are looking elsewhere is the playing time factor. And neither one of these guys was on the depth chart for Oregon in a significant way this year. Going into next year, they could have been. You're going to have a lot of turnover on the defensive line, a ton of turnover along the offensive line. Between the two, McCroy's a more impactful transfer, but the first transfer addition could be Johntay Cook. So Cook was a 2023 recruit, 5-star wide receiver who has gotten lost in the shuffle over at Texas. The Longhorns have a really good cadre of wide receivers, one of whom is a name you might recognize, Silas Bolden, the transfer from Oregon State. He was a part of that DJU-led Oregon State team in 2023. He's been a legit part of that Texas offense that's currently in the college football playoff. Matthew Golden is really good as well. Like they've got playmakers, and they lost guys to the NFL and have in the last couple of years, but they've got a lot of talent in that room. I say all that to point out that you're going to look at Johntay Cook's numbers over the last couple of years, and they're not going to pop off of the page. But this is still a tremendously talented guy and someone that would make a lot of sense to bring to Oregon. Why? Because the wide receiver room is going to look very different next year. Very, very different. And Evan Stewart, who I'll talk about more in just a moment, has a decision to make. That's a guy who, by the way, has not been heavily involved in the last couple of weeks. And I get plenty of questions about that. At some point this week on the show, I will address it because I have thoughts. But for now, Evan Stewart is a guy who could go to the NFL. He also has the option to come back. I don't know the value of Stewart's draft stock when he looks at returning. Like what would coming back to college for another year prove? He could absolutely have a bigger season. He could have more receiving yards next year than he has this year. But for a guy who, presuming, knock on wood, he is able to stay healthy over the last, hopefully, again, knock on wood, 3 games, not that I'm superstitious, I'm very superstitious. If he's able to stay healthy over the last 3 games that Oregon plays, or however many postseason contests they have, he's an NFL draft prospect. And he probably gets drafted ahead of Tez Johnson, even though Tez has been wildly more productive this year and last season as well. So I don't know what Evan Stewart's going to do. I do know for a fact, though, that Tez Johnson and Traeshon Holden, they're gone. They're out of eligibility. They will not be playing college football anymore. So they're gone for sure. Gary Bryant Jr. could get another year because he redshirted at USC before transferring because he knew he wasn't going to have the playing time, and then his freshman season was COVID year. So he could have another season of college football if he wants. Does he spend it at Oregon, though? Because that's a guy who, upon returning from injury, has sparsely seen the field as a wide receiver, has mostly been out there as a return guy. Maybe he'd have a bigger role next year, more like what he had in 2023 when he was tied to, or around Oregon's third leading receiver with Traeshon Holden. Maybe that's what he'd go for. But Johntay Cook would make sense because there is a possibility where all 4 of those guys are gone. Maybe it's only 2. I'd be surprised if it's less than 3. I'd be surprised if it's only 2, I guess I should say. It's not like there were a lot of other options there. You can't have half a guy go. Anyway, so I am expecting that both Evan Stewart and Gary Bryant Jr. won't be on the roster next year in addition to Traeshon Holden and Tez Johnson. So the other reason that Evan Stewart should pop in your mind here is this is a former 5-star wide receiver who has not produced near his full potential, but with Johntay Cook, it is even less so. Like dramatically less so. Stewart had at least had a couple games where he'd really exploded onto the scene, but Johntay Cook has just not had that. He's never cracked the rotation consistently. He has had under 150 receiving yards in each of his first 2 seasons. So Evan Stewart was untapped potential at Texas A&M, which is the other school reportedly looking at Johntay Cook. Another one might get into the fold, but right now what's been officially reported is Cook is down to Oregon and Texas A&M. Now, he changed his Instagram bio pic to a picture of him in Oregon gear when he first kind of announced before the portal actually opened that he was going to enter the transfer portal. That has since been removed, but that's an indication, at least, that Oregon's in the mix. And what do you know? Reportedly, Oregon is in the mix. Now, if this were a situation that comes down to NIL, what are the schools that can go toe-to-toe with Oregon? There are a lot more than most people would probably have you believe. A lot of casual fans, that is, would have you believe. But Texas A&M, they're not short on cash. So if that's what he's looking for, Texas A&M could offer it if they want it. Texas A&M's got a young quarterback that I'm sure they would love to pair with a guy of Johntay Cook's talent. But he has got a bunch of untapped potential, and he'd be another name in the room. With Kyler Casper, who's been injured, coming back, Jeremiah McClellan, looks like he could be one of the young guys that really pops next year. Justice Lowe, Jurion Dickey. You keep going down the list. There are a lot of guys in that wide receiver room. It's going to be a lot of unproven talent, and Cook would sort of be that. The advantage he would have over some of those guys, like a Jeremiah McClellan, for instance, is next season is going to be Cook's third of college football. So that's 2 years he has already spent learning college football lingo, not the specific offense that Oregon runs, but getting used to the speed of college football in practice, being in a weight room for a couple of years, and some of those redshirt freshmen potentially wouldn't have had that opportunity yet. So a full other season, that's probably part of the appeal, but this is a guy who the staff has a relationship with. Junior Adams, still on staff at Oregon, was likely, and I believe his primary recruiter for Oregon back in the 2023 class. So we'll see where he ends up and whether he ultimately lands with Oregon. But I think it would make a lot of sense. I don't think he's a shoo-in to just automatically. Yeah, Junior Adams was his primary recruiter. Surprise, surprise. I don't think he automatically steps in and is a starting receiver for Oregon. But could he step in and be a productive member of the room right away? Yes, absolutely. So that's a big transfer name to watch for here. I did want to give a shout out, which I'll have some more of in the third segment on today's show, to Bryce Betcher. So Bryce Betcher, the baseball player, won the award. I didn't even know they gave this out. So to my knowledge, he's the first Oregon player to ever win it. He's the recipient of what is known as the Burlsworth Trophy, given to the top player in college football, based on the committee's voting, whoever those committee members are, that used to be a walk-on. I don't know the roster of every other team in college football. I try to over on Locked On College Football, but I can't know every player on all 128 or 132, however many there are, FBS football teams. Hard to think of a guy more deserving than him. He has been one of Oregon's two best linebackers. You can make the case, and Pro Football Focus would tell you he has been Oregon's best linebacker this year. I thought getting him back for this season was, hey, that's a nice pickup for the defense. He's been so vital and making impact plays all season long. He surged past Devin Jackson and Justin Jacobs on the depth chart. Hard to argue with the results. And Lanning has sung his praises before, and everybody else has as well. So I love that he got that award, because I think that's what the award is designed to embody. Again, I won't tell you that I was super familiar with it before, but former walk-on, now having a big impact, that doesn't apply to anybody as much as it does Bryce Betcher. He's a starting linebacker and a high-impact player, and has been all season long on the only undefeated team in college football, ranked number 1 going into the 12-team playoff, playing the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State, because this system is whack, but it's the one that we've got. So shout out to Bryce Betcher. Absolutely love seeing that.